I am Tim with Tabletop Terrors, and let us see if we can do this again, shall we? We had some technical difficulties with our last stream, and unfortunately, I think it was like choppy spaghetti. I don't think you'll be able to get much out of that. If somebody wants to make a dubstep song out of it, no one's going to be mad. So hopefully you found the new link. I tried to share it around in post. I apologize. I really think it was a Google Hangouts thing. Rob and I both have fine connections. Everything's great. We're crystal clear here. So we've shared around the new link, and thank you all who stuck with it and who have clicked through. Hopefully no one is too confused. But we're talking about the Copper Jackals. I'm bummed. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm bummed because I feel like it was kind of a good lead in to what we were going to do tonight and how it works. But I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes. I'm going to give you the previously on the Copper Jackals. Rob from Performance Check has made a level 14 Paladin. We are going to add the Copper Jackals faction class to said Paladin. And so we're going to show you how to use the Absolute Tabletop RPG supplement, the Copper Jackals, Soldiers Without Compromise, to add a super heroic, expendable / Avenger style D&D template to your already awesome characters. Rob, does that about cover it?
There we go. Sorry, Tim. I was just sorting the chat. Thank you ever so much for having me once again. Pleasure to be here. Bronze dog joke. We're back where we were. Okay.
You did. You made a really good bronze dog joke.
I know. It's wasted. It's gone forever. But never mind. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. And absolutely. We were just talking about my Paladin, level 14 Paladin, Tyrael, and the nature of the divine in Dragongrin.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And so I'm going to try a screen share yet again. Let's see. That might be the thing that tickled the internet ethers there, because I'm not sure. Are we checking the chat? Is it better now? Are we coming?
I think people are saying it's better. It's
cool.
It's better. Let me just. That's what I was doing when I was quiet.
Beautiful. No, you're good. So while you do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show off the book a little bit here.
Yeah. Do
so we're talking about this book. I'm going to screen share. So in addition to being part of Tabletop Terrors, my brother and I, James, are also we are part of an RPG company called Absolute Tabletop. And so Absolute Tabletop we're an indie RPG publisher. And what we do is create 5th edition, primarily supplements, also some awesome system agnostic inspirational tools. And you can get that stuff at absolutetabletop.com. I am going to show you a book that my brother and I wrote called The Copper Jackals. So we're jumping in here. It's the middle of the book. But I want to show you specifically, if you want to run a Copper Jackals game, the first thing that you can get in this book is a little bit of flavor. So there's a section beginning the book called Cheating Death in Dragongrin. Now, it's one of those, I got to tell you this to tell you that. For those of you watching, we've got a ton of new subscribers. Thank you for your subs. Want to make sure you kind of know what Dragongrin is and get a little bit of that flavor on your tongue before we dive into this, so a lot of it makes sense. So, Cheating Death in Dragongrin. I think the number one thing to know about Dragongrin is evil reigns. Okay, so evil has won. Lightfall was the death of hope. Okay, and you're reading this probably on the screen, so I'm going to do that sort of sweep through it. The forces of good were obliterated. They fell to the military might of the dismembered lord. Think if Sauron won in The Lord of the Rings. Lightfall was the most catastrophic event. It is where evil won entirely. It's considered the event. In fact, the bad guys call it the dawn of truth. But the dismembered lord still reigns. It's about 20 years after Lightfall. And as his shadow spreads like a sickness through Grin and the entire realm of Dragongrin, heroes still attempt to rise. So that's kind of the setup. Now, Rob, in the realm of Dragongrin, because I'm going to talk a little bit about how a paladin would kind of play in. Why would you choose to play a paladin in a world so dark, dismal, and grisly?
Well, as we were saying before, I will once again, I'll try and do the cliff notes of what I said on the previous stream. Essentially, what interested me about the Paladin was when I heard Tim, it might have been on a Daily Damage, it might have been when I was reading through the Copper Jackals. The last time I actually read it, I've got to admit, was when I bought it on purchase when it first was released. But what got my attention was the fact that the divine is there's no proof, as you said, and anyone who does utilize that power is thought to be crazy, a bit like they don't believe him. They think, oh, that power must come from the bleak, like everything else does. And those who do wield this power, I guess, have this feeling within them that makes them think, no, it's not the bleak, it's something different. And it is their faith, and it is the power of that faith that, you know, that really intrigues me. And that's why I wanted to play a paladin. I think it's a great idea to be that last flickering flame as the darkness sort of surrounds it, as it were. That would be the metaphor I would use.
No, I love it. And the phrase that just, popped into my mind is the remnant among the remnant.
Yeah.
Is sort of what a paladin would be. And so I won't read the whole thing, but I just want everyone to kind of get an idea of, how, like I said, we make sure that if you want to use the flavor of Dragongrin, if you want to see what we call the 11 grisly truths, basically, of what you can do to set a game in the world, one of them, so as you kind of go through, amidst the shadows, a copper sun rises. It talks about imminence, this great power, the bleak, as Rob mentioned, which is a festering magical maelstrom. Being a hero will get you killed, etc. It gives you pillars so that you can set your games in this world. But one of the most important ones is going into detail. The existence of the gods is unproven. So I love what you're doing with that. I love the way that you're angling it. And you and I can kind of work offline, I think, to figure out a deity that would fit that well and kind of go from there. What kind of paladin are you choosing? Because as we want to establish, the Copper Jackals rule set is an entirely compatible 5th edition rule set that has been play tested for over 50 hours, and it adds right on top of your character that you already have. So I want to make sure that's clear to anyone watching. What kind of paladin are you going to add that Copper Jackals template to?
And as I mentioned on the other stream as well, the whole reason we're doing this initially was because I wanted to talk to Tim about making a Copper Jackal. I thought it was going to be difficult. I thought it was going to be really crunchy. But when I started actually looking through it again and actually applying it to my character, Tim isn't exaggerating. It's super easy. You literally just put the Copper Jackal stuff straight on top of your character. There's no difficulty in doing that whatsoever. What kind of paladin am I going to be? Tyrael, as with a lot of people, I like to imagine if you're living in Dragongrin, anger basically just creates more anger. Killing causes more killing. I think that Tyrael, I haven't thought out the full story yet. I know his backstory, but I don't know what caused him to take the first step, but it was not a good step. It was a step in anger. And because of that, he is going to be a Vengeance Paladin. I love the Vengeance Paladin anyway. I think they're really cool. I think they get some really good benefits mechanically anyway. And it's a classic story, the story of revenge. It's nothing, there's nothing better. So Tyrael is going to be the Paladin of Vengeance in this game.
I love that. And so where do you start? You're making a Copper Jackal, you buy this book, you go to absolutetabletop.com and you say, okay, well, what am I going to do here? So as Rob said, one of the things we really tried to do, and I'll screen share again, is just make this dirt simple, because I'm a guy who loves to spend time gaming, not spending excess amounts of time creating the tools with which I'm going to game. It's fun to roll up a character, and I don't mind spending a good 30, 45 minutes if I really want to get crazy. But there are some times where I just want to get to the guts. And that's why we start off with the lore of the Copper Jackals. It gives you this primer. And it's just a brief history of what they are. And you kind of go through, and here's actually a copper jackal with this piece of copper here called the jackal bite. But then we go through, and there's a cool timeline. So if you want to figure out as a game master or even as a player, maybe where your copper jackal was forged or formed, this sort of kind of runs you through that. And as you go through, you can see each piece of the timeline has like a cool brief description and like a picture. But beyond that, it gives you, it's a pretty long timeline, as you can see here. So beyond that, the next thing we're going to do, man, this is a long timeline. Here we go. Creating a copper jackal. So there you go. For all you lore heads, there's tons of cool history and a bunch of pictures. Just like you would see in a 5th edition or most other editions, but especially a 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons handbook, there's a progression chart, and it shows you what you get. Now, Rob has chosen a level 14 paladin. So he's going to get all of these things that come before that. Now, the book lays out very simply what a faction class is. It's not a prestige class. It's not an archetype. It's a brand new thing. So now you come through here, and it tells you exactly what you need to do. So at level 4 is where you get your first actual benefits, copper boons and something called copper attunement. So Rob, we're not going to really talk about your minting, okay? The minting is kind of like what would be akin to a level 0 hero becoming a level 1 hero, like that life-altering event, that call to action in the hero's journey. The minting is that for a copper jackal. So at level 3, you're recruited. And then there's a chapter initiation, and then at level 4, you get a copper boon and copper attunement. So boons are like those superpowers we were talking about right now. So Rob, have you even given any thought to what kind of boons Tyrael might have?
I certainly have, and I think he's going to be, I won't lie, he's going to be pretty combat focused. He's going to be basically get in there as quickly as possible. Tim, you shrank. You shrank, Tim. You disappeared.
This is the tech problem stream of the.
I just watched it sink beneath the camera line. It was horrifying. What was I saying? Yeah, so he's basically he's going to be basically very combat focused. I like the idea of him basically taking the fight to the enemy. I think at some point we are going to talk about the actual story of this character. And there was an occasion where I know Tyrael charged when he shouldn't have charged, even though charging is his speciality. I think basically getting into the combat as quickly as possible. So that's something that I'm going to play on. I know, because you get a jackal bite, don't you? Explain to me about the jackal bite.
So the copper jackals get their powers from something called Titan copper. And in our realm, the Titans are sort of the precursor to all other things. They were the Titans and the Primordials, like way back in the old days, the first war, the oldest war, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, this copper is very, very powerful. And you get this copper essentially imbued to you. So when you are initiated into a chapter and you take something called the copper vow, which we'll go over in a bit here, you then become a soldier without compromise and you gain a jackal bite. Now, this is where I think it starts getting like extra cool and customizable. A jackal bite is a mark that a copper jackal has. Now, like I said, they're imbued with it after they complete the copper vow. It's this chunk of raw ore but then you get to infuse it into your anatomy and it becomes this like living part of you. It's virtually impossible to separate. And the jackal bite's appearance can be sort of anything you can imagine. So don't think it has to be a tattoo. It's basically, you can have it. And in fact, there's a roll table if I can share again for a moment here. But this is where the character customization really, really comes into play. And we got a strong response to this as being one of their favorite things, is that people love how customizable a copper jackal is, but still keeping it simple. So the jackal bite, here are some physical manifestations: a piercing, a tattoo, equipment like a gauntlet or a mask. And you could see this list here. So yes, this jackal bite, especially by level 14, let's look at the growth section. When Titan copper is added to the body of a living creature, it's a common occurrence for it to slowly grow in mass. So while it doesn't happen every time, it's possible that on this, like for instance, on this forearm, this could start out as just like a small mark, and then it slowly gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So the jackal bite is sort of the cool, unique thing that you can make your own, and there's no limit. So Rob, tell me about your jackal bite.
I'd love to, and I'm glad you actually showed that page, because that made it really easy. I mean, it's all very well talking about concepts and things. It's good to see a few examples, and that really helped me. And for me personally, I really like the idea of the tattoo. Now, I don't think that this would be a tattoo that he would have been just given. I think it's just something that would have appeared because of the Titan copper. And what I particularly like is how it grows over time. I like to think that Tyrael's probably been a copper jackal for quite some time. And since he has become a copper jackal, it just started with two golden marks at his shoulder blades that look like this copper tattoo. But then as he grew in power, these marks began to spread across his back into basically a pair of wings. There is this tattoo of a pair of wings on his back that has sort of just blossomed like a tree almost as he's grown in power. So that's what I imagine his bite looks like, I think. And I've thought about this with his wish to wanting to take the fight in as quickly as possible. I can think of no better thing than having a pair of wings to do it with, you know.
I love this. And here's where, depending on how your game master wants to handle this, the jackal bite is the cool factor. We wanted this to be cool to use. So while the mechanics are play tested, and they were play tested a lot, we want there to just be this super heroic flair, even beyond what would be the norm in a standard, fantasy game of D&D. So there's this thing you can do called showing copper. And it's basically just like, because we thought about it. And we're just thinking practically, you're going to be armored up. So unless you've got a bare-chested copper jackal, those wings are going to be concealed forever unless you actually take your armor off. So we thought, well, what do we do to kind of, push through that? And we thought, it'd be really cool if you have this thing called showing copper. It's like flexing a muscle. And so within your Titan copper, you basically cause it to momentarily show this like glowing, like fleeting outline of your jackal bite. And it goes through, it's like through your clothes or atop these mundane objects. So we thought it'd be really cool, like if you wanted to show copper as an intimidation tactic or to show that you were a jackal to other jackals, just these spectral copper wings would just like, and then
you read my mind, Tim. That was exactly what I was going for. The moment I read you could have kind of like a mist go around you or your tattoo glow, I thought, I'm going to mix that. I'm going to have copper wings just whoom, behind him. So yeah, that's what I'm going for.
And for you guys, like you said, if the book is just full of ideas, but really work with your game master. And the point of having this jackal bite and to make it whatever you want. We have some people that do like full skulls. We have some people, there was one copper jackal that appeared in a Dragon Grin game that I ran whose actual skeleton was copper. And when he started getting his face beat in, like the copper was showing through. Does that make sense? It's the rule of cool. It makes perfect sense because it's cool. So awesome, man. So the Jackal Bite grants these powers, grants these boons, but you get to choose what it looks like. And I absolutely adore the wings. I think that's phenomenal. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, because you said you wanted to have sort of this person who's quick to jump in and grind away at combat. Yeah. So there are a couple of different routes you can take this. We can follow through the book, which at this point would basically bring us into talking a little more about copper attunement. So I want to kind of talk about this very briefly.
Sure. Yeah. Sounds good.
So how do you make something feel special forces? How do you keep that flair? And we immediately thought in our discussions, communication link. It's cool to have comms, right? And it's tough without spells consistently to have that sort of vibe. But like, think about I'll use any of the Avengers movies as a great example. You just know that they can all talk to each other because they're doing this. And this allows for these really seamless big action scenes where all the characters don't have to be in the same room. So it allows the banter, the language, the Tony Stark moments, where it all makes sense because everyone just puts their finger in their ear. So we thought, all right, we want to have the same style of thing. We want to have these comms. And this is called copper attunement. And so copper attunement is essentially, it's a basic set of rules that says, hey, once you've reached level 4, as a bonus action, you can use any of these abilities. And one of them is called an attunement locator. And there are rules to where you can kind of just sense if there are jackals within a mile. Now, you sense their general direction, and there's rules in there. So it's kind of like, okay, you can also try to establish a link, like pinging, like, breaker 19, you can do that and speak with anyone you establish something called an attunement link with. Now, I'm doing Black Ops. I don't want to be pinged. Well, there's something you can do called going dark, which prevents you from being sensed for a certain time and so on. But that is copper attunement. And we thought it was cool to create this very simple, easy to use, flavorful comm system in the game that's built into your Jackal Bite.
I really love that.
Does that all make sense?
It does. I mean, I really love that on multiple levels. I mean, like you say, it frees you up so you can continue these conversations where you've split up and things like that, just like in Avengers, that sort of thing. But also, the amount of games that I've been in where your spellcaster player is wincing at the amount of times he's had to cast message and he's just getting through all of his spell slots, and you can just tell he's getting more and more annoyed, so you never want to split up. Which is a general rule for D&D, I guess, but, whatever. I think it's cool, man. I love it.
Dude, that's awesome. The Copper Jackals, we split the party.
Always, without compromise.
Without compromise. So, I think let's actually, it's funny you say that. I think let's hit on the Copper Vow, because then we can go into the chapters of Dragon Grin. And so I'm going to talk about something called the Copper Vow, but Rob, without going into too much detail, do you feel like you've chosen a chapter? Because I think you had some questions about that. So do you have a general idea, or are we going to be digging in and getting our hands dirty here?
Well, there was one that I kind of like the look of, but I have since learned that it's quite a popular one. I mean, to be honest, I don't really know. I'm not fully decided on what chapter he's going to be. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm going to put my hands up and say Onslaught. I hear it's a popular one. I really like the sound of them. I mean, I think there's even a line in there that says, these guys are just crazy in terms of, you don't want to fight these guys.
Totally.
So,
and
like
we'll
that.
totally get in. We'll totally get an Onslaught, the most popular chapter by far. And so, yeah, we will definitely go into that. So, well,
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, my only thought was, because I have sort of thought of a backstory for this guy, and I know it's a one-shot, so I don't want to go into too much detail because it's just the one game. But it's tricky, because I don't know how much of that we're going to explore in the game, or whether I should just talk about it, because we might not have the opportunity. Do you know what I mean?
So I would just talk about it, because at this point it is going to be a one shot. I've got these wild hairs I keep trying to tame. It's going to be a one shot, and I know people watching the stream. It's just because he's like 2 against the silhouette, but it will be a one shot. Some of that stuff might come out, so I think it's perfectly fine to talk about it here. I think because this is supposed to be a character creation and let people see how the book's really used. You know, what's the real process? What's the real thought process? So I think so. Let's go into that. What I'll do, if you're cool with this, I want to kind of dig into the Copper Vow and then explain what that is, and then let that lead into sort of how we make your chapter or choose your chapter and talk about where your character would fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The only reason I brought it up was because there's something cool that I've thought about with the Copper Vow. But let's talk about that first, and then we'll go into that.
Perfect. So when you're making a Copper Jackal, you know, you, like we talked about, you go through this process called a minting. And the very abbreviated version is if the recruiter thinks that you have the stuff, you essentially get this chunk of unworked copper. And people know there are legends, there are myths, usually with a piece of parchment with very cryptic instructions, and you just kind of got to figure it out. And that's called a minting. Now, game masters can run something called minting sessions, where they're these jackals becoming jackals, you know, getting that first initiation into jackalhood, essentially. Once you've been minted, your raw unworked copper, and the reason why it's called a minting is because it becomes a coin. Those coins we saw in the beginning of the book. The coin is blank. It's a blank coin until you choose a chapter. Okay, so it's basically choosing what is your specialization. Are you, so like if this was more of the military thing, what is your exact battlefield specifications? Are you a helicopter mechanic? Are you, you know, and so on and so on. And the different chapters specialize in different things. But every jackal, no matter what chapter you're a part of, no matter how long you've been a jackal, you follow something called the Copper Vow. And I'm going to read the Copper Vow because this links all of the jackals together. And it goes something like this. Honorable beyond honor, without compromise. Courageous beyond circumstance, without compromise. Unprejudiced and just, without compromise. Loyal unto death and beyond, without compromise. Ours is the unseen kingdom. We are its warrior kings. Sondera Cumpris, forever without compromise. And you see at the bottom, Sondera Cumpris is Titan speak, roughly translating to forever without compromise. So the point of this is that when you run into a copper jackal, you know they're on the level. It doesn't matter what chapter, what, you know, how long they've served or where they were, etc. There's this immediate camaraderie, this immediate joining of the Copper Vow, and it's like without compromise. So what were your thoughts, Rob, on how your character would relate to that Copper Vow?
Well, this was another reason why I was really excited to play a Paladin Copper Jackal, because Paladins, as I'm sure most of the people watching this understand, have their own oath. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to play a character that is, and I'm going to talk about this, you're absolutely right, there probably won't be enough time for the backstory, so I'm just going to lay it on you guys. So buckle up. Wouldn't it be great if the Paladin's oath is going to be, he's going to be torn between his oath as a Paladin and the Copper Vow. He is going to find that without compromise is pretty difficult. Not everyone can be a Copper Jackal, I like to think. I mean, it's hard fighting monsters and war makers, but it's got to be hard just following that lifestyle. So I like to think that his own values are going to be questioned. He's going to question his own values against both the Copper Vow and his own oath. And I really like the dichotomy of that situation. So that's how I like to use that copper vow. I like that to be one side of the story, as it were.
I think that's fantastic. I love the idea, and I think that's the kind of thing that we wanted people to consider when they see the copper vow. Because, for instance, you have, monistic orders, you have guilds, and knights who are sworn to lords and things like that. And the idea of without compromise, it's like, first of all, you can play it however you want in your campaign world, but no matter how you do it, that phrase brings with it this weight. And like you're saying, to have this paladin's oath that you've sworn, and then also have this copper vow that you've sworn, which vow do you bend the knee to? And some have said in the past, like, well, what do you mean they're never supposed to compromise? Like, it doesn't mean if one guy wants pepperoni, the other guy wants sausage, they have to just never eat pizza. It means it's directly related to the tenet that follows. So the copper vow should only be considered if a jackal's honor, courage, fair judgment, or loyalty directly come into question. Because believe it or not, that has come up. But honor, courage, fair judgment, and loyalty are 4 things that would make the top 5, with the 5th being a warm body, that make up what a paladin usually is, right?
I love that. And I think it's definitely the loyalty part that came into question. No, not so much the loyalty. I think considering the well-beings of Copper Jackals over his own oath of vengeance. And I like to think that Tyriel, once upon a time, decided that he was going to follow his oath rather than look out for his fellow jackals in a climactic battle that was probably occurring against. I like to think it was Warmakers, Tim. I love the Warmakers. I think they are the epitome of a crazy 40k-esque battle, and I adore it. So it's going to be against Warmakers. Tyriel was given a choice when he saw someone he cared about cut down by this Warmaker, put into the Warmaker to make things worse. Tyriel saw this battle was going ill, and he had a choice. He could either command his fellow jackals to fall back and they could rally, or they could charge again. Consumed by wanting to get vengeance rather than looking out for his own jackals, he charged. And they all died, apart from him, typically. And in that case, his vow as a paladin, basically, I like to think makes him unpopular now amongst the Copper Jackals. I like to think that he...
crap, man, you're killing me. That was heavy, dude.
So he went for one, thinking that he was doing the right thing, and it turned out that he might have. I don't even know if he got his vengeance or not. I like to think that he didn't. I like to think that he probably lost.
I like to think so too.
Yeah, man, he lost, and he essentially from that point on is almost reviled by the rest of the Copper Jackals. He's still a Copper Jackal because he did so without compromise, but he just did it all for all the wrong reasons, and because of that, he's paying for it.
So I want to do 2 things. The first thing I want to do is just tell you what was just blooming in my brain right now. And so the first thing is to give everybody kind of a history, if they don't know, a very quick version. Warmakers are these sort of arcane automatons that encase heroes and feed off of their energies and memories, and then basically spit them out as husks, and then take another one and just... And so I would imagine this person who was taken into this Warmaker is someone who you cared for, someone probably who you said you'd look out for.
Definitely.
But I love the scene where the Warmakers, it's a tough battle, but the Jackals should have rallied. They were wounded, they were injured, and even Copper Jackals can be put into danger. Even Copper Jackals bleed. And so I love the idea that the tide seems to be turning, and you have this victorious moment where you feel as though you're winning, but it falters and it fails. And, in that sort of battle fog where everything is sort of like, and you hear that, like the cries of the bone snapping, and you just see sort of an out of focus, like War Maker sort of curiously looking, like the shot is from behind and you see this hulking War Maker just kind of pull the copper arm off a jackal and look at it quizzically and sort of throw it. Like it becomes a massacre, and then you're left, and the shot is far from the smoldering battlefield, and the jackals lie around you, almost as though they've been placed to encircle you, a wreath of shame. And the lead War Maker leans in to kill you. And he puts his enormous, cold finger on your chin, and he lifts it up to him. And he says,
"You will not die today. I want you to look around you. Look!"
And he takes and he forces your eyes to look upon your comrades. And then he takes his hand and he puts your face directly into his. And as it opens up and you see the dead comrade within you, dying comrade, just, "Help me." And then it closes back and he says,
"I want you to go back to them, and I want you to tell them what you've seen. That will be your punishment."
and they walk away.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Oh my God, Tim. Yeah, your punishment. You live. Tim, you crazy dog. That was amazing. Holy crap. Wow.
I think I need to go to the chat after that one. How is everyone doing tonight here in the chat? Thank you all for sticking with us. We had a live stream snafu. So let's check the chat. We have all kinds of people here. The Mappernomicon is here. What you looking at? Carol Dunster, Thyros, Chad Nick, the Gastro Gamer himself, who plays in the Lore Keepers game on the Performance Channel. Chad, my man. I'm gonna just run a one shot with Rob right now. No, that's what the chat is asking.
Dude, I felt like I was in there, man. That was incredible.
So, thank you all for watching. Post questions, and if I'm bad about it, repost them. I'm gonna try to keep hitting. Anastasia's here. So many people watching. You all are wonderful. Thank you for sticking with us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Rob, what a jackal you're making.
I love that, man. I think that can be better. I mean, the following scene I like to imagine as well is him returning to the other jackals and them just not saying anything. It's just a whole bunch of jackals on one side of the room looking at him on the other, and that's all it is. Just silence. And they're like, they all know. Oh, it's great.
That. God, I love it. And you know what? I'll leave it entirely up to you whether that story is ever discovered. If anyone knows about it, you can decide. And you can decide when we play, as we play, who knows it, who doesn't.
Sure.
But I love the idea that, like you said, everyone would sort of guess.
Yeah.
Like they just can tell something was wrong. I would think that there were multiple battalions around or multiple task forces. And I think if nothing else, some would have probably heard the retreat order. You know what I mean? In other words, like, you know, it was suggested like, okay, fall back. And, you know, it's arguable. Maybe you were in a situation where you couldn't, you know, it's arguable. No, I couldn't fall back, but I think everyone kind of knows what you did. And I love that. Gosh. So these wings, this jackal bite that you have, and this copper vow, and how it's playing with the paladin and all this, that kind of brings us to now with the attunement link being sort of your communicator that's granted you by the Titan Copper. Now we start getting into something called the copper boons. And the copper boons are literally like additional feats that are designed and play tested to improve your agility, your strength, oftentimes, allowing the wielder to escape death where another character would die. And you can skin this however you want. I like to play it to where you can either train to sort of learn these boons, or you can make it so that your boons develop naturally, sort of like this instinct that develops. But as long as you have that jackal bite, you have the ability to use these boons. And the boons are granted to you based on what level you are. You basically get better and better at using these boons. So let's be thinking about that. Okay, and be thinking about these boons, these superpowers, these feats. We're going to go over that here in a second. But where does a person like Tyriel that you just described to me, what chapter does he fit into?
Well, this was a question that I asked you earlier, was that I asked Tim, and Tim had the most excellent response. I said, Tim, just on Facebook, I was like, Tim, do Copper Jackal chapters get entirely wiped out? Which I thought might be part of this story. Maybe the chapter that he was with were the ones that got completely annihilated. So I thought maybe he doesn't have a chapter, but then if he doesn't have a chapter, then he loses out on some mechanical benefits, I think. I don't know. So maybe he did have a chapter that is no longer in existence, or Onslaught, because Onslaught are cool. And some of Onslaught died. I do find this actually really difficult. It's like being in a candy store. There's too much to pick, and I'm finding it really difficult. I am finding it tricky. I mean, what do you think, Tim? Do you think I should go? Because I mean, don't get me wrong. I really want to showcase some more of these chapters, because I think they're excellent. They've all got a flair about them, which I really like. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. So what a chapter is, essentially, and we talked about this, the Jackals don't normally operate as one big army. Okay. We thought in a world like Dragongrin, where evil reigns, you have to use guerrilla tactics. You can't have a big beacon of a fortress, just sitting on the hill waiting to be obliterated. So the Jackals find power and mobility in their dispersal. And so while there is the prime Jackals, this kind of group that oversees, that they're kind of the governing body as a whole if things really go up that high of a level. But basically allowing this autonomy, allowing you to do your thing and operate in a way that lets you do your thing in your chapter, it really makes the most flexibility. It's like there's this awful problem dealing with an eldritch horror. Well, there's a chapter that would go and specialize in that, and they know how to quell it quickly. So picking your chapter is like picking the team you're a part of, right? And it is tough, because you want to, like, what do you want to specialize in? It's like choosing a major in college. You're like, what am I going to major in as a Copper Jackal? So let's talk about some of the options. And I'm going to just go quickly, and I'm going to do another quick screen share here. So just to be clear, there are 20 chapters in the book. So right here is the chapter name, Alloy of Imminence. Here's a quick description. Masters of every variety of magic, arcane, divine, and imminence. That coin we were talking about, when you become a member of this chapter, that coin forms into this. So that blank coin becomes this coin. Their motto is, those who wield the alloy of imminence are the smiths of creation and destruction. So these are like every kind of magic, essentially. And then it gives you the chapter head, the initiation, the base of operations, as well as the mechanical benefits he was talking about. So as you level up, you get these things called chapter renown. Now, these are very flavorful kinds of things. So for instance, if you are this arcane, or rather not even arcane, but this mage, you get something called forbidden lore, which means you have this relationship between the arcane, the divine, and imminence magic and it gives you a secret related to them. And you basically get to work with your DM and come up with a magical secret that only you know. And I just think that's kind of cool flavor, you know?
That is so cool. That is so cool, that element that you and you alone in this world know something secret that no one else does. I think that's just great.
And imagine a whole chapter of these people. Now, how big are the chapters? Well, it depends on your game world. In my mind, a chapter, depending on how dangerous or specialized the chapter is anywhere from 7 to 15 or 20 jackals tops. I think in my Dragon Grain, in my head canon, they're very small, specialized groups. Some chapters might even only have 4 or 5, depending on how specific they are. So I'll do one more, and then I'm going to jump to Onslaught because that's the most popular one. But so Arcanics of Nil, Magitech wielding adventures and gadgeteers. So their motto is Asunda Tava Nil, assume nothing, build everything.
That's amazing.
So with their chapter Renown, this is one of my favorites. When you get to be a chapter avatar, actually no, let's go chapter Renown 3. You get an Arcanic turret. So it's an Arcanic device that looks like 3 mechanical legs with this like complex crossbow on top of it. And as an action, you get to deploy it. And it guards a 35-foot cone in any direction, basically shooting crossbow bolts at it. And you can reload it. So this thing like follows you around like this mecha crossbow spider and just because it's cool. So there are all kinds of chapters. I'm going to jump to Onslaught. Now, I'm going to do that thing since I'm screen sharing where I just scroll through so you can kind of see all the coins and all that stuff.
And the designs as well. Yeah, man, the designs as well.
God, I love the designs of the coins.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's very pretty. Look at that one. Yes,
I know. So the Bleak Treaders, which is essentially roving nautical rangers of the darkest magical reaches of the Bleak. So they're like these voyagers of bleak waters. Oh, it's awesome. So I will jump further down because I know that we don't want people to get too bored because they can't quite read what I'm looking at. It's just like,
yeah.
All right, real quick.
It's a taste though, isn't it? It's a taste, Tim.
It is. It's just
read it, go and buy it.
It's true, man. Check it out. The book right now is, I think it's like $6, $7, and it's 140, 150 pages of stuff. And so check it out. I'll make sure there's a link. The Night Huntsman. This is my favorite chapter. Slayers of the dark and plentiful monsters that roam the lands of Dragongrain. Look at this coin. Like it's this dude sort of holding a torch with like a child, and then all the monsters kind of around. I don't know why that speaks to me.
I think that's probably the most emotive. Like you're getting a real kind of emotion from that. And I didn't notice this before, but the thumbprint on there as well.
Bloody thumbprint on there.
Yeah. Man.
Just a cool extra touch that I asked the artist for, and he obliged in spades. And so the motto, don't let the light you see restrain you. Don't put your trust in the dark outside. Man. Just love that stuff. But let us get to Onslaught. Here's why people...
That's the sentence that sold me on them.
The toughest nails warriors who back a wallop and can take a beating.
Unkillable. My God.
They are. And that's the idea. The idea is that Onslaught are the Warhammer 40K Copper Jackals.
Yeah.
They're just, if we don't go to war, we bring war with us. They get this crazy thing called Invictus armor. And it's like, Convictus armor. Basically, you get to put this like casing of armor over yourself that helps you stay alive in dragon fire and things like that. Onslaught works, man. So that's just a sampling.
It really
of some
works
of the
for him, doesn't it? Onslaught would work for him, and I think, yeah,
they were made.
It's gotta be.
Onslaught was made as that kind of chapter. If you're looking for just a heavy hitting, like, hey, we're the Expendables, that's why Onslaught was made. And I know that. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with picking the one that fits. That's why I think it's so well
popular. Yeah,
Exactly.
there's a reason.
Because they're also, you know what it is? I don't know if you play, there's a game Blizzard makes called Overwatch.
I don't have it, but I have played it. I do like Overwatch. It's pretty cool.
So one of the characters in there, because they're all very unique. In fact, you could probably liken the different play styles and Overwatch characters to different chapters in, because there's all kinds of chapters represented. We drew from things such as film genres. So if you go through, you could actually, I don't know if I've ever revealed this publicly, but you can go through. There's a suspense chapter, there's a Western chapter, like you can go through, but on top of that also there's the D&D tropes, and there's a flavor for everyone. But in Overwatch, amidst the myriad character options that are so unique and all so well balanced, there's this character named Soldier 76, and he is a run and gun shooter designed as a character that sort of embodies what 3D shooters are about. And he's well balanced, but if someone knows how to play him well, it's really hard to beat him because he's got it all. He's a little bit of everything. And that to me is what Onslaught is.
I do really, really like them. There was another one I did look at, which was the chair kickers as well. I think they're pretty cool. But what can I just say, Tim? Like you saying about that there's different influences per chapter and things like that. I think that's really smart. I think because obviously this is still a setting. This is still something that you want to base different types of games off. So the Night Huntsmen, for instance, I imagine like doing John Carpenter's The Thing with copper jackals. Just things erupting out of people and horrifying, nightmarish stuff. That's what I imagine. So yeah, man, it's a really smart move. Well done.
Dude, thanks. And there's also like there's a chapter that's politicians. As crazy as that sounds, you need powerful people in high places. So like their chapter renown is in 3 days' time. If you get high enough as their renown, in 3 days' time, you basically can gain audience with any member of royalty. So if you wanted to play like a Varys or a Tyrion Lannister, Copper Jackal, it's called Fulcrum in Hand is the name of the chapter. You would be a member of Fulcrum in Hand. If you wanted to be, there's something called the Murdered Muse, who are just like what happens when you have these incredible warrior poets, these bards, these people who are masters of all the arts, but who are also very deadly. So that's the Murdered Muse. You have the Black Octave, which are essentially the silent night assassin kind of thing. So the chair kickers, one that you mentioned, I'll share this again real quick here. So they are a roving lawbringers who mete out justice to the guilty and protect the innocent. So their coin here is this noose with a skull in it. The motto, the gallows never lie. Essentially, I love their initiation. You must hang by the neck until your life leaves you, if only for a moment. So they're basically, if you had to say, like, well, what are they? It's like they're Judge Dredd Copper Jackals is kind of what we're thinking. If you wanted to kind of put a name to it. So maybe, I mean, that could fit.
That fits as well, doesn't it?
So yeah, it's... And you don't have to decide on this stream. If we kind of talk it through, even if we plant some seeds and you go, you know what, I want to use this. Here's something else. I'm a huge fan of reskinning things. So and this is entirely up to you. This is dependent on the amount of work you want to put in the next 2 or 3 days. But if you want to just flavor one of the other chapters, because the main thing is, the mechanics have all been play tested for the chapters. So those things are fairly balanced. They work well with the renown, but everything else is flavor. The base that they live in, the motto, the name, the coin. If you wanted to come up with, a chapter that was all outcasts, or like the dregs, like for a while we had, we had talked about making sort of like a catch-all chapter. There's even a breakout box in the book that there's a little known chapter that's basically all monstrous humanoids who've kind of turned for good, that kind of stuff. So I don't care how you flavor it. You could make your own chapter. I trust you to do it. Just pick mechanics that fit. That would be my only request, is probably try to find the ones in a chapter and just reskin the whole chapter.
The only thing I'd say, Tim, in any other situation, I would consider potentially reskinning something. But as this is a Copper Jackals session being run by one of the two fathers of Dragongrin, I don't think I would be doing it right if it wasn't how it is in the book. You know, this is like, that'd be like me going in and playing a Lord of the Rings campaign and saying, yeah, but in this, the Rivendell is like underground and parts of it are on fire. You know, like people will be like, what are you talking about? And I'd be like, well, you know, it's my no. This is Tim and James Dragongrin, so I'm going from the book, man.
Dude, I love it. So the choice is up to you. You know, you get to choose your chapter renown. You get to choose your chapter, which grants you the renown. And so there's a lot of cool choices there, right? So
Definitely.
The chapters, we've kind of covered that. Let's move on to boons. Now, we looked at the chapter renown, and a lot of them they're not all just flavor, but they're not typically direct combat mechanics.
Yeah.
Because it's not just another thing you can do to attack. We tried to really flavor them up. I'll give you an example. There's one chapter called The Blood Riders of Lightfall. And basically, and you know, Chris Wilhelm of Drop Dice actually was really heavily, he helped a lot on this chapter, and his name is in the playtesters, but just skinning them and kind of coming up with the concepts, he did a great job with this and let us use it because he's awesome. But basically, your Jackal Bite allows you to summon a spectral steed. And so it's this like blood steed that you ride on. And so the entire chapter is riding on these spectral mounts, like coming down the hill, like, you know, if rust and blood were also smoke. And that's not really combat, but it gives you something that no one else has. So
I love that.
It's cool, right? Like we really just went for the rule of cool for the whole book. We really tried to do that. So I'm talking a lot, but it's because I'm so excited about the book, and I think
me too, man. I'm loving this, and this is what I wanted. I just wanted to sit down with you and talk about this stuff, man, because it's so cool. Let's keep going.
Cool. So let's do the boons. First, I want to check in on the chat. I feel like I've neglected these wonderful people who are spending their time with us.
Tim, if you wouldn't mind answering a few questions in the chat while I quickly go and do something that I forgot to do.
Yeah,
I'll be like 2 minutes tops.
Fantastic. So Chad Nick from Gastrogamer says, Mecha Crossbow Spider. What the fudge, Tim? I want me some Arcanics of Nil now.
I will be right back.
Absolutely. Let's see here. What you looking at? Troll in the chat as usual. The thing about copper is that it's so soft. So C-Jacks are soft. I love you. It's Titan Copper. Gosh, what you looking at? It's Titan Copper. Get it right. Titan Copper is the hardest material on the prime material plane. Just kidding. What you looking at is awesome. He's been with us since we had like 2 subscribers. So let's see here. Oh, what you looking at said he loves the C-Jack coin. Sent him pics of a few of my challenge coins. Yeah, dude. In fact, the coins you made were actually awesome. Mapronomicon says, there's been a slew of questions. Question up to now. 1, Theros. Are there rogue copper jackals that have gone dark, switch sides, and now sporadically reconnect to comms to spy on the rest? Yes. So there are 2 fragmented groups. One of them is called the Rustborn. And Chris from Drop Dice actually ran a game with the Rustborn. The Rustborn have separated themselves from the copper jackals. And because their Titan Copper has been kind of turned off from the spigot, if you will, they need to basically kidnap young recruits and harvest their copper to augment their own copper. So there's the Rustborn. Then there's also the Copper Legion, which left in an amicable split, keeping their copper, the Titan Copper powers, but going to defend one of the last strongholds of good called the Copper Sun, believe it or not. So yes, there are copper jackals that have switched sides and gone dark. They're called the Rustborn. There's also the Black Steel Jackal who was captured. He was a high-ranking jackal who was captured and was experimented upon and created into this kind of dark, twisted version of the jackals. And he's worked for the Dismembered Lord. So very good questions. So sorry. I'm going to keep trying to scroll up. What would really help is if you put in all caps, question, : so that when I'm scrolling back up, that I can actually grab them. Because it's hard to tell as people are conversing, you know, what the actual questions are. Let's see. Okay, so Chad Nick says, when is the Copper Forge coming out, Tim? So we have this thing called the Chapter Forge where a bunch of people submitted their own chapters. And it's actually, I think it's like this close to being finished. We just need to put one little thing up front. But we're waiting for the release of the physical books. We're going to put it all out at once to kind of, hey, here's the Copper Jackals, because we want it all to kind of be one big push where get your copy of the Copper Jackals, also get your copy of the Chapter Forge, and, you know, use them together, that kind of thing. So it will be soon. Our goal is by the end of the year. My personal goal that, you know, we've kind of talked about, and I think we're on target to hit, would be Chapter Forge and physical books of the Copper Jackals. We'd like to be out by Black Friday is kind of what we're pushing for, but we'll see. Jackal Prime roll out. So the Mappernomicon says, how do the Prime Jackals delegate tasks? Do they ever operate in their own agenda, or do they have a divine ear? Very good question. So the Prime Jackals, and what I'm going to do is actually look it up in the book, because I want to make sure that I use the language we use in the books, because it's already, all the hard work is done. So the idea is that the Prime Jackals they're only going to try to control a chapter if it's needed. So think of this very militaristically, okay? You've got something where the Prime Jackals would say, okay, there's a dragon loose. Who are we going to send to fight the dragon? Okay, we're going to send this chapter and this chapter and so on. Do they interfere, quote unquote? They are in charge. You do have to essentially send a tenth or a tithe to the Prime Jackals. And then there's the first jackal, and no one knows exactly who the first jackal is, which is interesting. Only, well, a select few know who the first jackal is. And so when you're talking about the Copper Jackals and Dragon Grin, a lot of it has to do with trust, knowing that everyone has each other's back, and kind of going at that angle with it. So let me actually get to, okay. The Prime Jackals are also the first incarnation of the Copper Jackals. So they were these kind of 12 comrades. Now, these men and women became the Prime Jackals. Some of them consider them the strongest Copper Jackals. They are said to have the purest and rarest form of Titan copper at their disposal. Some legends say that they were nothing more than cutthroats and a brutal mob of killers who kind of used their powers to save their own necks after lightfall. Others say they were noble heroes, and they did it on purpose, and their sense of justice drove them. But no matter what you believe, the Prime Jackals are some of the most powerful mortals to exist in Dragon Grin. So hopefully that kind of answers that a little more. And the book goes into detail. Like I said, it's like 150 pages, and there's a lot of really good bite-sized lore that you can kind of just drop into your games. Rob has returned. What's up, man? You mind if I answer another couple questions here?
No, go ahead. What I just did, I actually put into the chat, for those who have been listening a lot or watching along with us, which chapter they feel best suits Tyriel as well, to get their feedback as well.
Brilliant.
So let's see what they say. But yeah, man, go ahead. I just went to get a drink and I had to sort something out, but I'm back. I'm good.
No, I love it, man. I love it.
Love it.
Thyro says, see, now I'm going to have to buy this supplement. Thanks, Tim and Rob. LOL. And he actually... Listen, I'm the writer, so it's hard for me to say like, oh, well, but I can promise you it's worth the money. If nothing else, what you get for the amount, it's like this thick when you get the printed copy, and it's like I said, 150 pages, and it's pretty dense. There's not a lot of fluff in there. Plenty of lore, but not.
There's a lot. There's a lot in there, and it is well worth it. It is great.
Awesome, man. So the Mappernomicon says, I know what's happening after death. I know there's a spot for me in the afterlife. Something badass, but real life, no thanks. I'd sell my grandmother down the stream if it got me a continuance.
Oh, well, you know, at least you're honest. That's a virtue.
Right. There you go. So there was one other question that I scrolled past. I'm almost there. Bear with me just for a moment here.
Yeah, man.
Let's see. Oh, here we go. What happens with the copper after they die? Is there a necro scrap business filling that void? So here's an interesting thing. There's something called legacy copper. Legacy copper is very much exactly that. If you get a piece of legacy copper, you are a very honored jackal. That means that a famous jackal or someone who has fallen in combat, you essentially absorb a piece of their copper. And some of them, you know, are very rare and sought after because, like we talked about, they develop differently for each person and the jackal bite and all that stuff. So it's kind of a big deal to be granted that honor. But yeah, there would also be a necro scrap business with the Rustborn. They are seeking that copper and they kill copper jackals or try to on purpose to hijack that copper. I also love that I'm proud to say, I'm not making any of this up on the spot, that this is all in the book. So it's good that the questions that are coming have been like, wow, that's a really good question. But we spent a lot of time on this book asking the same questions ourselves. And so I love that. Yeah, no, that would be this, and this happens, and this is how it works. And this, so I'm excited for all of you to read the book. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised with how it kind of flows and all the questions that are answered in there. Cool, man. And there are a couple more that I'm keeping an eye on. But I think we should kind of zone in on some boons.
Some boons, man. I'm excited about this. And yeah, totally. Great questions. There should be more. There should be more questions. This is great.
Boons are like picking your superhero's abilities. It's basically what you're doing here. And there are a ton of them, right?
Mm.
Now, the cool part is, with there being so many, one of the difficulties with a book this prolific, with so many pages of so many things, it's like, well, okay, how in the world do I pick a set of boons? Because as you know, as a chapter 14, you're going to pick 3 of them. Sorry, a chapter 14. As a level 14, rather. Now, that's a pretty big deal. So it can be difficult. Like, well, is there a list of, you know, et cetera, et cetera? I'm going to screen share what we've done to allow for you as people reading this book to flip through and just say, oh, okay. So the boons section looks a little something like this. All right. So copper boons is a quick note on the mechanics, and then it breaks it up into these different categories, right? So there's defense boons, imminence boons, down here is assault, subterfuge, mobility, support, and weapon. So it's pretty clear cut what section you would go to find boons of that type. Now, if you scroll down, it's a nice table. And then from the table, you can go and research further into what you want. So for instance, Rob, theoretically, you've said that you want your character to be run and gun, just butt kicking. So if I'm in my assault boons, I want to, and it says what boon, it's an additional attack or extra damage. So Rob, just as an example, would you want Of those two, for the sake of the example, would you want to look at an additional attack or extra damage?
Now, you see, Tim, because I knew that we were going to be on a stream and people were going to be watching this, I've had quite an in-depth look into these boons, just so you know, I'm not just sat there just reading each one, because I don't know about anyone else, but when I'm making a character, like I like to just go through my options. So I did come up with a few that are potentially what I'm going to go for, and the one that stands out for me on that page you were looking at right there is Copper Butcher, which ups your damage dice essentially by 1. Tyriel, I decided right from the get-go, he's not really so much about defense. Turns out he's actually got quite a good armor class, but he is going to be all about the damage output. He's not going to be holding a shield. So I thought, I want this guy to have this gleaming copper great sword. And I thought, as he's a paladin, wouldn't it be cool? Paladins, just to go into this quickly, once they get to a certain level, their weapons become an extension of their power, and you are constantly smiting with your weapon. You always get your smite on your weapon. So I thought, to make it simple as well, mechanically and in terms of the story, wouldn't it be great if I changed those 2d6 that a great sword is to 2d8, and then that just nicely adds onto my smite damage, which gives me an automatic extra d8. So I'm just rolling d8s.
I love this.
I love the idea of this weapon being an extension of him. So that power is feeding in and mixing with the Copper Butcher ability as well. So that one is one that I'm certain on. I would love to have that one.
That's perfect.
So, yeah.
So, and let's use this as an example for other people who are kind of looking to use the book and like, well, how does this work?
Yeah,
the
idea
idea is this: you're a paladin. You have this idea of what kind of paladin you want to be, and you want to be a foe slayer. You want to be this dominating force that just wipes through the battlefield. And that's kind of what I'm hearing. So in the book, if I'm looking at this, he mentioned Copper Butcher. So if in the book I'm thinking, okay, I go to my assault boons section, I flip through here, and it's fairly easy to say, okay, I want to do more damage. So what do I want to do? And there's a brief description right here. Now you'll notice, conspicuously, in fact, probably, that there are no mechanics here. That's because this is the simplest way to lay this out, to then go and look at the mechanics of what it does a little more in depth. All right, so here's the idea. He goes to Copper Butcher and it says, I want to increase my weapon's damage die. 4 is the minimum level you need, which is fine because that's when you start getting boons. And then it tells you melee or range. Now, because it's a digital PDF, I'm just going to come up here to the top and I'm going to type in Copper Butcher. That's the first instance. Next instance is going to be, oh, wait for it. Here we go. So this section is an alphabetized version of what we just saw in the previous section. So you'll notice it has everything. Now, it's funny because a lot of them start with copper. So there's a pretty wide C section here. But if I go to Copper Butcher, it is much more clear and it gives me the exact mechanical benefits. Now, here's where the playtesting really pays off because, like I said, 20 plus hours just on the boons alone, 50 plus hours of overall playtesting. So subcategory is damage. It's melee or ranged. A lot of flexibility with this stuff. It allows you to do your weapons damage. So let's talk about this huge copper sword. Any weapon that you're proficient with may act as 1 die increment higher than it normally would for damage. Then it gives you the increments. So it also does limit it to a degree to make sure that you can't go any higher. So a D4 becomes a D6, a D6 becomes a D8, D8 becomes a D10, et cetera, et cetera. Any weapons with damage higher than this are unaffected. So that is how you choose a boon. So we're going to go with Copper Butcher. I think that's a smashing idea. So let's kind of spitball. What are some other ideas that you want to go? You want to just beef this guy out to be pure damage, or do you want to dip into some other pools of boons here?
You know, And can I just say, first of all, that's another thing that I found looking through this book is it's simply great that at the very from the get-go there are those. It's broken up, so you have assault, you have weapon, you have defense. You know, that I found so helpful, and that's something that is lacking in the actual core D&D books. You know, that is something that isn't there. So that is all Carney-ish. That's just that's right in there. So that was really helpful. But in terms of what I wanted to have, I mean, I don't want him to be entirely just about, you know, damage.
Okay.
But I mean, there are a few that I've looked into. Do you want me to? There's another one that I'm going to leave till last. That I'll talk about that I definitely want. So
Sure.
that leaves me one that is up in the air. Now, I like the idea of him being a skilled swordsman. Like, okay, like he's in there and he's obviously doing his damage output, but I wanted him to be able to, you know, have a bit of flair about him. And I read one of them called Copper Marauder.
Oh yeah.
Which, Tim, means that if an attack misses you, you get to take a reaction, which is an attack of opportunity. And me and Tim have had quite a lot of conversations about sword fighting because of his character in the Law Keepers is a great sword fighter. And I personally love stage combat. I love swordplay. So the idea of my warrior, this paladin, being able to parry and to counter shows competence and skill as well as sort of beastly damage as well.
That's fantastic. And so just kind of give everybody an idea, because one of the things that we found was a huge key to the Copper Jackals is tying a lot of these boons to one of the only things in 5th edition D&D that is the same for every character across the board, no matter who you're playing. And that is the proficiency bonus. So you're asking yourself, well, wait, what if I use this with a barbarian, or what if I use this with a rogue? We've thought of all of that. We've play tested through it and made sure that the language in this book protects you from anything like that. In fact, one of the boons specifically says something like, this cannot be used as sneak attack, because it worked in every other way, but it would have broken the rogue to where they were way too powerful. So let's take a look at Copper Marauder, because if just conversationally, every time an enemy misses, I get to just take an attack of opportunity, that is game breaking. However, let's take a look. Notice under Copper Marauder here, it specifically says, if a creature misses a melee attack against you, you may use your reaction to make an attack of opportunity. You may do this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per short or long rest. So the abilities and the boons level up with you. That way there's no power creep. We stayed almost entirely away. I think maybe entirely away, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm lying. There's one exception that kind of staggers. We stayed away from prerequisites too. We didn't want to go into the 3.5 to where you have to pick a certain talent tree. All of these are autonomous. You can just choose them. And it's like, no, I want one support, one defense, one this. So that is a really good combination, Rob, is that Copper Marauder, because with your proficiency being as high as it is at a level 14, this will emulate you being a really good sword fighter. So exactly. I love it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that as well. Basically, the way I've done it, because I didn't want to be flipping back to the PDF, I did write down a few of the ones that I like the look of. So I didn't actually write that down. But yeah, it's again just it's really elegant, just including that. It's all linked with the proficiency bonus, and it's once again just shows how easy it is just to lock this stuff onto existing mechanics. So it's great. It's great stuff. Now, it was a toss-up between Copper Marauder and Copper Resistance, which I have down as you essentially, I think once again, per your proficiency bonus, get to pick a physical resistance. So you can say, I want to be resistant to piercing damage or bludgeoning damage, you know. But now that we've actually had that conversation, which is again the benefit of doing something like this.
Yep.
I think it has to be Copper Marauder.
It works, man.
It just works.
And what's cool is that if you decide on a different one, it's as easy as swapping it out because they're all approved. They're all, they're all written. It's not like you're asking me for a homebrew. Meaning, if you're like, man, I really didn't even realize, I want to go more the Paladin route and I want to hit up Copper Recovery, you're good to go. You know what I mean? You don't have to run it by me. And typically, if your game master approves of the book, they're like, sure, sounds good. And so, yeah, I think it's fantastic. So I think I'm super on board with both of those choices.
Yeah, man. And again, I mean, we're on a live stream. I don't want to be sat going through every single one of them, umming and ahhing. So I think that's really good. And if I do change my mind, like I say, I'll let you know. But after this, I don't think that will be the case. And that leaves me a third one, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. So basically, you have 3 boons by the time you reach 14. And you'll also have 3 chapter renowns as well. So if, for instance, if you were to choose the Arcanics of Nil, you'd also have that awesome spider turret walking around.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get 1 more. And you said you kind of had like one last one that you wanted to kind of throw at me. So what are you thinking?
So I like to imagine there is the scene where he managed to finally develop this next boon that he's got. I'm not entirely sure what happens in the scene other than this. His Jackal bite goes into just another zone. Okay, it's over 9,000, and at a critical point, whether it was in a battle or trying to save someone's life, his Jackal bite manifested into actual copper wings erupting from his back. I like to imagine it being still this light, so they aren't actually properly there, but they are, if you know what I mean. They're made of the light. I know what you mean. Like in Diablo, that kind of thing. So I love the idea of it all being about that tattoo again, coming back, and he gets Copper Flight, which I believe is 10 minutes. Once again, is equal to your proficiency bonus in how many times you can use it, and it's really cool.
Totally.
What do you think?
Absolutely. I love it. In fact, so let's take a look here. So the idea is that there's mobility boons. There's a whole section of boons. It's like, okay, I want to do stuff like that, like fly or climb, things that would be, because again, we want it to be useful in things beyond just, I hit 4 more damage, that kind of thing. So the idea here is, I'm looking and I scroll through and it's subterfuge and mobility boons. And I'm like, all right, subterfuge being obviously things like, I want to look like someone else. I want to be a master of tools, improve my stealth checks, create a magical fog, be invisible. Again, all these are balanced once you read them, but Copper Flight, to be able to fly. So let's take a look at the actual mechanics. Now notice the level here is 8. Some say, well, that breaks flight. Well, no, not technically. Look at when it is available as a spell. And still on the lower level, no Copper Jackal below level 8 is going to have flight. And we put this level prerequisite in there for that purpose. It feels bad to be a monk who's like his whole jam is about punching and doing really hard damage if I give a copper boon that does the same thing at the same level. So Copper Flight now grants this paladin the ability to do this at level 8 as the prerequisite. So we go to the next instance of Copper Flight, and you'll see we try to be very careful and judicious. For whatever reason, whenever I search in the Adobe Reader when we're doing this, it just freaks out on me. So I'm not sure if you guys can see. Here we go.
No, it seems fine on my end.
Mine is just, it takes a while and it lags out. So be able to fly. Your Jackal Bite allows you to achieve flight, granting you a fly speed equal to your movement speed for 10 minutes. You may use
Yeah,
this
so-
ability a
yeah.
number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So you can 5 times per short or long rest, you can fly for 10 minutes, which basically means you can fly, my man.
And what I was going to say, I mean, going back to what you were saying about the accessibility of Fly the spell compared to Copper Flight, I think that's really smart. I wouldn't have thought of that, to be honest. I wouldn't have thought of that at all. It's really smart. I really like that. So, yeah, man, and it's not stupid. It's not stupidly overpowered to the point that it's like your movement speed changes as well. Like I think Flight actually does that. I think Flight, I could be wrong, but I think it does like double your movement. Maybe I could be wrong, but I love it. I think it'll be wicked. So he is now essentially this avenging angel of a copper jackal. I mean, I wanted this to be over the top because that's how they've always been described to me, is how I've always read about them. I want him to be this guy with glowing wings, descending with a glowing sword.
Exactly.
Vengeance. I love it. I love it so much. It's just so crazy.
Well, and in a world with evils so mighty, don't you want this to be the answer that saves you? In a world where evil is so epic that it is an ever-reaching shadow, and these War Maker automatons are looking for even upstart heroes to drain their life force. And in fact, the book begins with, the way that we start the book is with a brief kind of narrative. And, it starts out, I won't read the whole thing, but it's, the sky burns the color of charred blood. The muddy boots of the War Makers of Grin pound cadenced thunder across the cobblestone streets of Aberwith. And it just talks about how these War Makers, essentially, people litter the streets, leaving the world, their wounds bleeding, the last of their hopes into the gaps of the cobblestones. And the copper jackals show up. And it's like, this is the answer to the evil so great and so powerful. This winged, avenging angel just... And now it's at least a fair fight.
Death will find you upon copper wings, my friend.
Oh, God, I can't wait for this game.
Oh, my God.
You British dog.
I am a British dog.
Whew. So let's jump to the chat, shall we?
Let's. What are they saying?
What are they saying? So it's been a while. So
let's have some more questions, guys. I'm hungry.
Absolutely. Let's see here. All right. Oh, Chris from Drop Dice is also making us awesome overlays.
Chris, my man. Oh my God, the guy's an artist.
Oh, he really is. In fact, if I can, it might take a moment here, but I think it's important that I show you a very special overlay that Chris made for me.
Yeah.
So there we go. So that is the overlay that Chris made for me. I noticed the infinity symbols, and then me barfing the rainbows, the cats and the tacos. It's like he captured Dragon Grin in a nutshell. So one of the questions, though, that I'm just going to put my other overlay back on here.
I couldn't concentrate. I was just staring.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
So they're talking about the Kappa Choppa. Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper. Come on.
Come on. Come on.
Do it.
Rob, your army is pretty spot on, man.
Thanks, man. I've had lots of time to practice. I have a very sad existence here.
Let's see here. I'm looking. I know that there were some questions, but it just continues to scroll down. I feel like I probably should have cut and pasted some. Already thinking of copper smoke bombs, muskets, flash powder, fireworks. Copper tendrils is one of the ones.
Ooh,
copper thermite. Really cool. Copper tendrils is basically this area of effect that kind of these copper tendrils lash out and hit everything around you.
Oh, I love that. That's a great idea.
So there's a lot of represented. There's a lot of fighting styles and not just like my sword hits, but there's a lot of different ways. There's
Mm.
something that Chris Wilhelm and Marquise love, which is Marquise from both of them from A Point of Inspiration. There's this copper gauntlet that basically allows the monk to use this weapon that fits on their fist.
Yeah.
And that's
great.
just a cool buff for a monk.
It definitely is, yeah.
So Thyro says, can lightning melt Titan copper? Probably not melt it. Like, do copper jackals need to be scared of it? Probably not.
It'll
Titan
jazz it up a
copper's
bit.
yeah, it'll definitely char it, I think, but it would probably Titan copper is very powerful. It's just our word for it. I like to think that this chemical, this element, is something far beyond what we would have.
It's like your adamantine, basically.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is, and I really love it for that.
Totally.
Chris said, it's funny you say that I have a degree in studio art. Well, that would explain it. That would definitely explain it.
That does explain it. Yeah. Yeah.
And
His
look what
overlays
you
are
do
always
with it. It's great.
exactly.
You make rainbows come out of people's mouths.
He uses his powers for good.
For good, absolutely.
Oh, here we go. Tim, how do you feel about morally evil copper jackals that are still loyal to the Copper Jackal organization? So it's one of those things where the copper jackals are sort of allowed to operate however they would like, unless they begin to break what would be considered the copper vow. If their honor, their loyalty, and those kinds of things come into question. Well, now who polices the police? Who jackals the jackals? There's a group called the Besieged. And essentially the Besieged are very powerful jackals who are like the military police of the copper jackals. Okay. So the Besieged are controlled only by the prime jackals or the first jackal himself, should he choose to dispatch them. Because if there's a vow, then it stands to reason that means that the vow can be broken. If the vow can be broken, what punishment lies in breaking it? Because if there's no punishment, then what's the point of the vow, right? Hopefully we uphold it because we believe in it. But unfortunately, there are always outliers. There are always people pushing the rules and the limits. So think of it like this. Every jackal has kind of heard these tales. The Besieged are, if you break the copper, and here's the other thing. If you break the copper vow in rebellion, like if you purposefully and flagrantly, belligerently break the copper vow, you're going to get their attention much more quickly. Then you'll have to answer to them. If the Besiegers sent after you, it's said that they won't return until they've removed your jackal bite. So the idea is they might not kill you, but if you're off abusing it, if they can find you, they're coming and getting the jackal bite back. Now, where does that leave the Rustborn? We talked about that. Well, they're off the attunement beacon. So they're, if a Besieged sees a Rustborn, they're going to take all that Titan copper back. But they can't find them on the attunement beacon. So the Besieged are the ones who would kind of dictate that. Now, when you say evil, there can't technically be fully evil copper jackals because that wouldn't be honorable, courageous, unprejudiced, or loyal, right? Especially the honorable part. That's why that's in there, because if you took away honorable, there are evil people that are courageous, unprejudiced, and loyal. So it has to be honorable within what's considered honorable by the prime jackals and the first jackal. But that's up to you as a game master to decide. There's even a breakout box about running the copper vow in a morally gray world. And it talks about how to do that. The idea of the copper vow is to keep the good guys good, but what you define as good in your campaign that's up to you. So hopefully that answers that question. Any thoughts you want to add to that, Rob?
No, I think it's great. I mean, I was actually thinking of I just remembered a question that I've always wanted to ask you actually about the copper jackals, but for some reason I keep forgetting, or it isn't the right topic or whatever. I'm curious, as someone who's created this, have you ever envisioned the final battle, as it were? I always like to think that one day the copper jackals will work out a way to hunt down or find the dismembered lord. Have you ever thought of the climax to this story? I mean, obviously this is a setting, so like you know, it's there for stories to occur within. But do you ever think of like Endgame? Do you ever think of what lies beyond this particular time period?
Absolutely. Right. So it is a campaign setting, but I like to think that we're going to handle it a lot like, say, like a World of Warcraft, where there would be different expansions. So
yeah, and events, yeah.
right. And so there will be event books that come afterward. You know, there's kind of a code name in my head, and we basically call it the Copper Dawn, which is that. It is the final battle. It's like Lightfall Part 2. It's like all the good guys of the realm finally march against Grin. It's the, think Return of the King, but you've got the Copper Jackals. You've got there's basically like the rebellion, sort of like in Star Wars, is in our world is called the Undying Light. So you've got the Undying Light. You've got the Order of the Quillen Stone. You've got Tome Hearts. You've got Typhons, who are essentially the opposite of dragons and dragons. So they've returned. Some of the Typhons have returned. So all the beings of power versus all of the beings of darkness. So you've got, on the Dismembered Lord side, you've got the Harbingers, who are like the anti-Jackals. You've got, obviously, the War Makers. You've got the Dragons. And so, yes, there would be this, essentially, this Lightfall Part 2, where it's like, who's really going to win? And I love the idea. This isn't official, but in my head canon, I love the idea that the Dismembered Lord and the first Jackal face off, and I like to think that they know each other very well, and perhaps were even partners at one time.
I love that, like a Xavier Magneto sort of deal.
Exactly,
they're both on
like
the same level. Like they
exactly
have
like
conversations and play chess.
And I love that idea that they would have that sort of. So in my head canon, the first Jackal once worked for or with the Dismembered Lord, and there was even a story, and this was in a damage reduction, so it's not like we're like, you know, this has kind of been out there, where James and I talked about how we even think that perhaps he stole the Titan Copper from Grin right after Lightfall. All the battles were kind of winning. It was like, okay, Hitler was in his bunker, but he won. And one of his top generals was like, nah, you weren't supposed to win. Like, this wasn't supposed to go this way. You actually won, and now I'm taking this cool stuff that we found together, and I'm going off to eventually come back and try to beat you. So that's all headcanon. That's not in the books yet, but that's kind of the idea.
No, I know. And I mean, I understand, obviously, you need to reserve that for, obviously, future content. And also, you want this setting to obviously have multiple different stories in it. But I've always been curious, because I thought, what would it take? What would it take to change Dragon Grin for the better? I love that, man. But anyway,
So
what else are we going to do with this character?
No, you're great. You're great. You're great. So, for me, the final step would be, and you know, I don't even know if we, you know, want to do it right now, would be to just choose the chapter, because you've got your attunement, which allows you your communications. You've got your boons, which allow you those superpowers caused by your Jackal bite. Now it's picking, you know, who are you a part of, what team, you know, what banner, what coin do you wield, and what powers come with it, because that's really that kind of flavor layer that glues everything together. That's like the epoxy. That it's like, are you one of the X-Men, or are you an Avenger, or are you the Fantastic Four, or are you like, you know, you got the superpowers, but what team you're a part of also plays a part in the flavor, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I mean, because the one thing another thing that drew me to Onslaught was the armor, the Convictus armor, isn't it? But I don't think we actually get that at that level, do we? And I know it's obviously a one shot, so I wouldn't be able to use it, I don't think.
I don't think you would be able to use it.
No.
Now,
so I
was gonna say, that's not to say that it's hard to say, because meaning you could be developing it as you are on the adventure, but I probably wouldn't give you the full version of it.
No, I would. And to be honest, I wouldn't expect that anyway. Like,
right.
And I think now I've been thinking about it a bit more. The chair kickers do sound like a really good option.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I feel like it kind of suits your character.
Yeah, and I like the idea. I really like the way that they, they're uh how they become a copper jackal. Like they're being hung until
Oh yeah,
basically
yeah,
dead.
yeah.
I think
Basically,
that's
you have to hang by the gallows to experience it. And I like to think, again, headcanon, but I like to think that it's so that you never judge lightly, because you know what it was like to hang by the neck, and you know what you're doing every time you put someone in that noose. It's something you can emote and feel from
definitely.
experience.
And I think it's even more poetic with Tyrael now that we've discussed this story, because I mean, I like to think that the chair kickers have put a certain value on death almost. They don't see it as it isn't always a bad thing. And I think that with him being denied death as a chair kicker would be just so bad for him. Like, no, your punishment is to live, which is the exact opposite of the chair kickers. So
That
I
makes
think
perfect sense to me.
it makes perfect sense. So I think it's probably going to have to be chair kickers. I don't know exactly what is it that they get then, Tim.
Let's take a look. Let's take a look. And again, that is
beauty.
That is the beauty of having the searchable PDF. Because I'd love to have a physical book at the table for people to flip through the lore and have the timeline and stuff and pass around. But so let's look at.
Well, as I understand it, that isn't too far off in is it?
No, we're actually in the final phases. The major delay on that was what you were looking at previously. That is not how the boons were laid out at first. And the reason why we really decided to do that is because the other method that we used to lay out the boons was a bit of a space waster. And it was difficult. It wasn't as easy to flip through and choose right away. So you're talking about, we added the alphabetized listing. Didn't exist. We had to generate that alphabetized listing and recreate and reformat. And you're talking, I think it's over 75 or 80 boons. Then generate the tables that has the listing and all that. And we can thank James for that. He did every bit of heavy lifting on all of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, dude. Like, for every Tim who doesn't have a James, I don't know how you guys make it through the world.
Oh man.
But that is why it's been taking so long, because we thought we want this book to be something that it's great, but. And for me, the layout of the boons previously, if you look at some of the old PDFs, it's just a square on the page, and it's fine. Yeah. It's great, but it's not as easy to use, and it doesn't look as good.
Yeah, so, no, I understand.
But yeah, so it's on its way. Like I said, my goal is to hopefully have it out before or on Black Friday would be super great. So we're looking at the chair kickers. Let's look at some of their chapter renowns here. So one of the things to note is that chapter renown always begins with some sort of skill expertise. This is just, I think, kind of rounding out your character in some of the non-combat skill checks that they would have. So you get to choose expertise in one of the following skills. So essentially the expertise as listed in some of the other classes, you get to use that, where you get to double your proficiency bonus. You also gain living quarters in the inn at the Cask and Flask. Now,
that's pretty cool.
So each of the chapters have a home base, a hidden base, and you get a living quarters in that base. So you've got a room somewhere. That's where your copper jackal kind of sleeps. You know, the old army, like laying on the cot with the white sheet until the sergeant calls, kind of thing. So your chapter renown 2 is you're a truth seeker. Your day-to-day life has taught you to spot even the most well-meaning lies. You gain advantage on all checks to detect deception. If you identify a lie in this way, you then gain advantage on any checks to lie to that target.
Oh, wow. This guy just reads people like a book.
Exactly. See how it's very flavorful. It's not about,
man, I like that.
This is like, well, and what we wanted to represent is you're sort of a bounty hunter in a way, but also you're about to hang somebody from the neck. You want to make sure you know if they're telling the truth.
Definitely, yeah.
So it's kind of that kind of thing. And then your chapter renown 3, the Hangman's Noose. You have a 50-foot magical rope ending in a perfect knotted noose, the appearance of which is up to you. As a bonus action, you may mentally command the rope to move up to 20 feet.
Oh,
Once
no.
per round, right?
Oh, my God.
And so once per round as a bonus action, you may command the rope to either secure and knot itself to something to form a loop and hoist anything of up to 1,000 pounds. Attack using a ranged or melee attack bonus, whatever is highest, and then on a successful hit, it deals no damage but grapples the target, typically around the neck.
Amazing.
So that's the kind of cool flavor that's just throughout this whole book, and every chapter is wildly different. So that when you're playing a chair kicker, it's just cool because you get to see if the dude's lying. Okay, he is lying. Well, I'm going to lie back, and he's going to believe me. Then his buddy literally kicks the chair out from under him, tries to run out of the bar, and you lash him around the neck with your magical rope, and he's grappled.
I love that. I just had the most morbid thought as well, because he has wings. He just has to go up.
Exactly. No, listen, dude, listen. Judge, jury, and executioner. So
yeah,
that is the chair kickers, and all of the chapters have those kind of cool, flavorful bits. Like I said, there's 20 chapters in all, so you're talking about, think of all the mechanics. And if you never play a Copper Jackal, this book for the mechanics alone, to add to classes you're writing for your homebrew, or archetypes, or monsters, or anything, the stuff in this book is just ripe to be reskinned anyway, if you never even use it as a Copper Jackal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you, for example, have been watching this and think to yourself, oh, I want either an NPC or one of my characters to be able to fly, but, have a different way of going about it other than the spell. I mean, there you go, right there. So absolutely, man. It's a beautiful resource. I love that. And I think, just for the record, I think it's probably got to be chair kickers. I think that's sold
Perfect.
It. Oh dear. That's just phenomenal, man.
So, I mean, that about seals the character. At least I think you can let some of it cement and kind of sink in. But what do you say? Are you down to maybe answer a couple more questions before we call it a night here?
Dude, I would love that. If anyone in the chat would like to make any suggestions for Tyriel as well, that would be fantastic. But yeah, let's do it. Let's have some questions, man.
Very good. So Thyros has been very patient, and I did not miss this question. So question 2, Thyros says, does Legacy Copper impart special abilities? Ooh. Memories from those who used it before, leftover tendencies, or personality traits? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to search Legacy Copper in the PDF, hit enter, boom, I'm right here. I love that. So with Legacy Copper, it's extracted from either a fallen or retired Copper Jackal. Okay. Mechanically, what Legacy Copper allows you to do is you get one additional usage of a single copper boon once per short or long rest. Okay. So mechanically, what we decided to do in the progression chart is you get a total of 4 boons. But at level 20, we wanted to kind of put a little more mustard on it. And we thought adding a 5th boon just got a little wacky. Like, that's hard to track as a character. As a player, you're like, whoa, hold on. I can do this, 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 and this. So we thought, what's cooler? In addition to what you can already do, what if the Legacy Copper grants you the ability to use the boon again? After you've spent it, you need to fly, the volcano's collapsing, you've already, rescued all the people you can rescue, you're spent. Well, because that Legacy Copper, it kind of gives you that up. The answer to the question about the memories and the flavor, I would totally do that. I would encourage the players to do that. And you can do that to whatever degree you want. I would probably do it very lightly and with subtlety. So not like direct memories, like, but I would do something sort of like, if I never liked licorice, now I do. Little flavorful things like that, to where it's like, it's from the Legacy Copper, but it's not like, oh, my wife and daughter died. It's like, I probably wouldn't go that deep, but you totally could if you want to as a game master.
And also, Tim, I think that's I mean, I think that's a really great idea for adventure hooks as well. I mean, if you had a certain memory that flashed through your mind of a certain experience that gave you information to progress the story or a quest for your players, like, I think that's great. So yeah, use at your own discretion. I think is great.
Dude, that's actually a really clever idea. In fact, that could be, you've done a few Copper Jackals missions and the granting of legacy copper, all is well. And this, and now this is going a little, probably different direction, but this Jackal retires and all is well. And you get a flash of maybe something that was left unfinished, or perhaps something he or she shouldn't have done. Similar to like what happens when Tyriel retires as a Jackal, if he lives long enough. Someone who got that legacy copper could maybe get that flash and finally know the truth.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of, I mean, a lot of DMs, and I like doing this personally. Like, I like personal quests. I like it when one member of the party that you're playing with has to go on a certain quest, and the party go with them. I love the idea of there being like, it's almost like internal affairs for Copper Jackals. Like, they find out something happened in the Copper Jackals' history that they then have to go and investigate. That kind of thing, I think, would work really well for that as well. Man, I love it.
That. No, I absolutely love that. So, any other questions? Anything that we've missed? I'm scrolling up trying to figure out more that I might have missed.
I'll if not, I have one question to close us out, but let's check the chat first, because I have something else that I want to.
Sure. So what I'll do, I was just going to say, save your one question to close us out. Save that for just 1 second, because I want to give everybody that kind of last second of, they're wrapping up. Thyros asked one more question. Would it be feasible to have a piece of legacy copper be an intelligent magical item? Sure. I think especially depending on, like, say take a piece of legacy copper from Atlas of Eternity, or some of these like very knowledgeable sort of chapters, or like just depending on the chapter, I think it would even be more so. Like, there's one called The Light of Horror, who basically feign worship to great old ones, see them begin to rise, only to try to slay them and imprison them forever. And so I think that would be crazy. Like, if it was just a sort of like, I think it's totally a cool idea. I think, sure, why not? Mr. Drop Dice himself says, because the Copper Jackals that live in Stratmere are trapped, they all get legacy copper. They start with new emotions or memories, later getting the actual mechanical benefit. That's awesome. And if nothing else, the Copper Jackals book is a set of questions that we answered, but everything in there can be customized. So awesome. Well, Rob, I would love to answer your final question here of the night.
Sorry, Tim. I had a message from Chris, and I have a little bit of a surprise, but I'm just trying to get it to work on my computer. So what I'll do is I'll ask this question, and then I'll try and get it to work whilst you answer. Because, I mean, you're obviously responsible for creating the Copper Jackals with James, and I would like to know what kind of Copper Jackal Tim Carney would make.
That's a good question. I think if I had to make one, it would be, I would probably make a Night Huntsman, an old dog, like level 14 or 15, this grizzled sort of witch hunter, like the video game Witch Hunter, kind of like, and maybe these Night Huntsmen particularly work in pairs. So you literally have like a pair of these kind of witch hunter partners. But I would probably go sort of split so that I was able to handle a multitude of different things. So I'd probably do one assault boon. I would do one defense boon, probably some sort of subterfuge boon. And just for the fun of it, because we're talking about it and they're my favorite chapter, I love that coin too. I'm going to look up their chapter benefits, because I think they're awesome. So let's just read a couple of those real quick. And all right, so let's look at the chapter now. First of all, the motto. We talked about that, but the chapter head, Roland Wolf Eater Marshall, who survived a weeks-long ice storm by killing and surviving off the corpse of a lycanthrope. That just scratches an itch for me. I don't know what it is. Initiation. You must track and slay a monster and also make reparations to the family of one of its victims. So there's some heart to these guys, and I just flippin' love that. Oh, hang on here. Did Rob drop? I think he did. Hold on. Are we still live? Yeah, we're still live, right, everybody? Yeah, we're still live. Yeah. Hey-o. Huh. Let's see here. I'm going to resend Rob the link to this chat just in case. We are still live, so I think... Not sure what happened. You dropped. But with the Night Huntsman. So let's talk about their chapter announced. Chapter renown 2, The Footsteps of Beasts. You know how to read the signs in an area plagued by a monster, and there are plenty of monsters in Dragongrin. So you find these signs or tracks of a victim, and you basically, in 1d6 hours, you can begin to hunt. So you can go to an area, basically any area, and roll a d6. In that many hours, you pick up the tracks for a monster. So this is an instant plot hook generator for this chapter, which I think is so cool. Cloak of the Slain is their chapter renown 3. You have crafted a cloak from the hide of a monster that you've slain. When you're wearing this cloak, you're specially outfitted to deal with monstrous creatures. Basically, you choose one of the following creature types, similar to like a ranger, and then you have advantage on all ability checks or skill checks made to track or identify creatures of that type, and also advantage on saving throws made against them. So this is like Monster Hunter Extraordinaire right here. So I would choose a Night Huntsman. I would probably choose some sort of damage dealing or assault boon. I would choose some sort of support or defense boon. And then I would probably do some sort of subterfuge or mobility like boon, so that I'm able to, if I need to, like think the movie, not the movie, the TV show Supernatural, I think would be kind of rad. Like just a pair of comrades in arms trolling across Dragongrin, slaying those monsters. I think that'd be baller. Let's see here. I think it might be some sort of... Rob can't get back into the Hangout, which is very odd. I've never had this happen before. Super weird. Anyway, he's got a surprise for me, so I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to go back to the chat. Let me try to help him out. Any ideas from the chat? Shawarma is delicious, says Chris. Like tacos, they were best from a street vendor in a native country. Dude, we ate some tacos in a port. We went to part of Mexico for our honeymoon on a cruise. And like you said, street tacos, just making them right there in this cart. A huge cast iron skillet. Whew, it was awesome. Thyros, I don't have Rob's number. We're Facebook buddies. We don't, he said, call him. Let me try again here. Not sure. Hey, I hear clanking. Hey, what's going on?
That was so weird. I was trying to, I really don't know what happened there. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. If I had to guess, don't forget, Google's been funky. We just had those major technical issues, so it could have kicked you out. The first Provokers game, no, the session 0, it literally would not let me log in to the chat. Yeah. It was saying
it wouldn't let me jump back in, man.
This chat is not available for users with your permission. I was like, what? So anyway,
I know.
So to say it in a British way, Did you get that surprise sorted?
Oh, I bloody did, mate. I bloody sorted it out. Hang on, let's see if I can do it. And if I
Oh,
speak,
hold on here. I will just click you so that you're highlighted.
yeah.
What? That's awesome.
There we go. I don't know. I can't see if I'm coming up. Is it coming up?
You are. So I clicked on you. What that means is that no matter how much my big fat mouth flaps, you will never leave the purview of our wonderful viewing audience.
Yeah, so check that out. That is Chris's work there from Drop Dice. That is Tyreal. And I think he's even got a bit of a wing sort of motif going on through his armor.
Yes. I love
So,
it. Dude,
there we go.
your angel from above. That is wonderful.
Always.
So yeah, thank you all for hanging out with us. Thanks for just listen. This was really, really fun for me. I hope it was half as fun for all of you. Thank you to Thyros, Drop Dice, Carol, who's with us the whole night, Chad, Nick, What You Looking At. Connor was here. I'm going to leave some people out, so I don't want to do that. But I just want to thank everybody who stuck with us. Mapronomicon is always great. Just thank you for hanging out. Rob, I want to let you close and just plug anything you got going on, and then I'll wrap up and we'll end the stream.
Thanks, Tim. And yeah, absolutely. I echo those thoughts. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us and watching. I have had an amazing time. I mean, I've always loved the Copper Jackals, but actually having my own personal stream to discuss a character making has just been a luxury that I cannot describe. So thank you very much, Tim. In terms of stuff I want to plug, if you like the guy who has been our gracious host this evening, go check out obviously Tabletop Terrors, which you're on at the moment, but also if you want to see this guy role play his face off, not literally, go and check out the Lore Keepers on my channel, Performance Check. Tim plays an incredible character on in that game. We've got 2 sessions under our belt, and I'm really proud of them. I'm really happy with them. And I am now, I'm going to be running a one-shot tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, based around the Magisterium, which is an order that regulates and controls magic in the 9 kingdoms. And it's basically going to lead us right up to the majesty that is Brigade Con, which begins at midnight. So it's going to be really exciting, and I hope you check out that game, and we'll have a lot of fun. But yeah, thank you once again, Tim.
So this is Rob. He's with the channel Performance Check. Check them out. I love Performance Check. And like he said, just the games that are on there, the Lore Keepers games, are so fun to play in. And I have gone back and rewatched them, and I am one of 4 amazing players, and he does a great job DMing. So if you liked any of this stuff, check out the Copper Jackals. People ask us all the time, you know, like, well, hey, how can we support Tabletop Terrors? How can we support Absolute Tabletop? The easiest way is just give our products a shot. If you like what you heard, if you saw some of the screen shares and you thought, oh, okay, I can use that stuff. Right now, the book is, it's $6.95 and it's like 150 pages. But I'm happy to announce that actually this weekend, so it's not right yet, but by the time this video goes live, you're going to, like tomorrow when it's finished buffering and people can watch from the beginning, you're going to be able to get the Copper Jackals for 50% off the cover price. So the price through the weekend of Brigade Con is going to be $4.95. So for $5, you get 150 pages, because we want people to have an opportunity to just say, you know what? I'm not going to go grab that Big Mac value meal. I want to eat some lore this weekend. Give it a shot, and we hope you like it. I think you will. But thank you so much for watching. It looked like you unmuted, Rob. Go ahead.
Oh, I did. Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say bye. I thought you were.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So listen, you guys are amazing. Rob, you've been amazing. Thanks for hanging out. We will, even though the stream will end, I'll hang out in the chat for a little bit with everyone, just kind of say goodnight and everything. But until next time, may your dice roll high.